The red light is on. My granddaughter Megan told me to do this. Make a video. She's 24. She thinks my life is a quiet book she can skim. She doesn't know about the storm. At 82, you're supposed to be serene. I am not serene. I am a woman who has lived with a secret hurricane for 60 years. I married the wrong man. I stayed with him for 47 years. I did it because I was lonely. It was the worst reason. Let me tell you what happened. It started in 1963. I was 22, new to Chicago. A typist. My apartment smelled like old cabbage and other people's perfume. I'd come home to silence, just the echo of my own typing keys in my head. I'd stare at the yellow wall phone, willing it to ring. My mother wrote every week. Her letters always ended the same. Find a nice man, Michelle. Don't be alone. The loneliness was a physical thing, a cold spot right between my shoulder blades I could never warm. That's when I met Joseph at a company picnic by the lake. He was kind, stable, a junior accountant. He liked his steak well done and his future predictable. He was lonely too. Our dates were pleasant, undemanding. He proposed on a Tuesday over my mediocre meatloaf. I said yes. It was the next logical step. My apartment was so quiet. I was terrified of that cold spot growing. I remember smoothing my skirt, thinking, this will fix it. This is the cure. It felt like a solution, not a joy. The wedding was small. The marriage was quiet. The mistake showed itself fast. We bought a little house. The silence wasn't gone. It had just multiplied. It stretched thin and polite between us in every room. We were careful roommates sharing a mortgage. He read the paper, I mended clothes. We talked about the weather, the neighbors, the price of eggs. Never about the quiet chasm in our living room. I'd look at him reading, his kind face, and feel a panic so sharp it stole my breath. Is this all? I thought I'd married to end loneliness, but I had never felt more isolated. Then, in 1967, everything changed. At a crowded art gallery fundraiser, I was volunteering, pouring terrible punch. A man walked up, not for a drink. He had paint under his nails, a direct, unsettling gaze. He said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." His name was Leo, an artist, a teacher. He pointed to a chaotic, splattered painting. He asked, "What do you see?" No one had asked me a question like that in years. We talked for 10 minutes about color and chaos and meaning. It was a collision. My mind, asleep for so long, sparked awake. When I left to go home to Joseph, my hand trembled on the steering wheel. I couldn't erase his voice. I went downtown again the next week. I started visiting the community center where Leo taught. I told Joseph I was taking a pottery class. They were stolen, glorious hours. Leo taught me to see light through a dirty window, the anger in a brushstroke. We'd walk after, talking about everything, poetry, regret, the vast, screaming hunger for a real life. He saw the storm in me. He didn't offer calm. He offered to stand in the rain with me. In those alleys and coffee shops, I was the most alive I had ever been. It was euphoria, but the guilt was a constant, sick companion. I was living a lie. I had to make a choice. I decided to leave Joseph. I practiced the speech for days, but the night I planned to say it, he came home early. He was holding yellow tulips. He said, "For you, you've seemed so sad lately." He had noticed. In his own quiet way, he was trying. I looked at his kind face, the tulips. The words died in my throat. I couldn't dismantle his world. The next day, I called Leo from a payphone. My voice was choked. I said it was over. I heard his quiet sigh. He said, "I understand, Ellie." The receiver felt like a stone. I buried that part of myself for decades. Joseph and I had a daughter, Susan. We were careful partners, cordial. I folded Leo into a locked box inside my heart. Joseph died 15 years ago, a sudden stroke. At the funeral, people called us a devoted couple. I accepted their condolences. I felt like a fraud. The loneliness came back, but now it was layered with regret, a deep, permanent chill. I had chosen safety. It left me in a different, more profound solitude. Last month I was in the attic, sorting for Susan. I found the box, a small canvas wrapped in brown paper. I'd bought it from Leo at a student show, a seascape, turbulent grays and blues. I'd never dared to unwrap it. I did now. Tucked behind it was a note. The ink was faded. It said, "For Michelle, who understands the storm, never settle for the harbor. L." I sat on the dusty floor and wept. I wept for the young woman I was, for the life I didn't choose. The painting was a question I'd refused to answer. That's when I knew I had to find him, not to rekindle, to speak my truth. It took Megan 3 days of internet searching. Leo was alive, 91, in Arizona, still painting. My heart hammered like a young woman's. I wrote a letter, just 3 lines. "Leo, it's Michelle from Chicago. I kept the painting. May I call you?" I mailed it fast. The wait was agony. Every ring of the phone was a lightning strike. His call came on a Tuesday morning. His voice was older, weathered, but the warmth was immediate. We talked for an hour. He'd never married. He'd traveled, lived a big, messy, authentic life. I told him about Joseph, Susan, the long winter of my choice. I said, I was a coward. He was quiet. Then he said, "No, you were brave in a different way. You honored a promise. That's a kind of courage, too. But Ellie, did you ever find your storm?" I looked at the painting on my lap, the wild, beautiful waves. I whispered, "I'm looking at it right now." We didn't make plans. We didn't need to. The conversation was the closure I'd needed for 60 years. Hanging up, I felt the cold spot between my shoulders finally dissolve into warmth. So that's it. I'm 82. Don't marry because you're lonely. Loneliness is a temporary guest. A marriage is a house you build. If you build it on empty ground, you'll live in a hollow structure your whole life. Marry for the storm. Marry for the conversation that electrifies you. For the person who makes your inner world feel seen, even when it's chaotic. Marry for the authentic collision of souls, not the quiet avoidance of solitude. That's the only thing that weathers the decades. My life is not a cautionary tale. It's a reminder. It's not too late to be honest, with yourself or with someone else. Find your storm. Have the courage to live in it. The red light is off now. The red light is off now. But I'm not done. You see, after that call with Leo, I thought I'd feel peaceful. I did, for a day. Then the rest of it came back. The weight of all those years. I need to tell you about the day after I called him from that payphone. The day I truly buried myself. I went home. Joseph was at work. The house was so quiet. I remember standing in the kitchen. The yellow tulips he'd brought me were in a vase on the table. They looked too bright, like they were screaming. I took the meatloaf leftovers from the icebox. I stood there and ate them cold, right out of the pan with my fingers. I couldn't taste a thing. I just chewed. I thought, this is your life now. Eat it. And I did. I became very good at being the wife. I learned Joseph's routines. I made his well-done steak every Friday. I starched his shirts. We had Susan. I loved her fiercely. But even that love, it was wrapped in this secret sadness. I'd look at her little face and think, don't ever settle. Don't ever do what I did. But of course, I never said it. One night, years later, Susan was maybe 10. Joseph was reading the paper. She was drawing at the table. She held up a picture. It was all wild, swirling colors, no clear shape. Joseph looked at it. He smiled his kind smile. He said, "Very nice, honey. What is it?" She said, "It's a feeling." He nodded, confused. He went back to his paper. I looked at that drawing. My heart cracked open. It was a storm, just like Leo's painting. I saw it. I saw her. I took the drawing. I said, "It's beautiful. It's perfect." I put it on the fridge. But Osif never asked about it again. That's the silence I'm talking about. That's the hollow house. The decades just passed. Jove and I, we didn't fight. We didn't laugh much either. We were a team, a quiet team. He got sick very fast at the end, the stroke. In the hospital, he held my hand. He couldn't speak well. He looked at me. He said, "You were a good wife." He meant it as a thank you. It felt like a sentence. I squeezed his hand. I said, "You were a good man." And he was. That's the tragedy of it. He was a good, kind man. And I had spent 47 years lying to him by being only half there. That's the guilt I carry. It's worse than if I'd left. After he died, the loneliness was different. It had texture. It was made of all the words I never said. To him, to Leo, to myself. I'd sit in our quiet house, my quiet house now, and feel the ghost of that cold spot. It wasn't just in my shoulders anymore. It was in my bones. Then, last month, the attic, finding that painting. I told you I wept. But I didn't tell you what I did next. I brought it downstairs. I didn't hide it. I put it on the mantel, right where a Joseph's clock used to be. I stared at it for hours. Those turbulent grays and blues. They weren't sad. They were alive. They were powerful. That note, "Never settle for the harbor." I had settled. I had chosen the safe, quiet dock. And I had spent my whole life watching the storm out at sea, wondering what it felt like to be in it. That's when I called Megan, my granddaughter. She's so bright, so sure. I said, "I need to find someone." I gave her Leo's name, Chicago, 1960s. She asked why. I just said, he was an old friend. I owe him a conversation. She got that look young people get, like she was on a detective show. She said, "I'm on it, Grandma." She found him in 3 days. When she told me he was alive in Arizona, still painting, I had to sit down. The past wasn't past. It was right there, waiting for me to pick up the phone. But I was scared. What if he was angry? What if he'd forgotten me? What if he said, "Michelle who?" The letter was the hardest thing I've ever written. Those 3 lines took me a whole evening. My hand shook. But I did it. I mailed it. And then I waited. And then I waited. For a week. Every time the phone rang, my stomach dropped. It was always Susan or Megan or a doctor's office. I started to think he wouldn't answer, that he'd taken one look at my shaky handwriting and thrown the letter away. I'd ruined it twice, first by leaving, then by reaching back. Why would he want to hear from me? I was just a ghost from his past, a sad woman who chose wrong. Then, Tuesday morning, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but I did, and it was him. "Ellie," he said, just that. And I was 24 again, in a crowded gallery, my heart pounding. We talked for an hour. It was easy. It was hard. He told me about his life, the studios in New York, the teaching in California, the years in Italy. He never married. He said, I had great loves, but they were storms too. They came and went. I never wanted the harbor. He asked about Joseph. I told him. I said, he was a good man. I was a coward. That's when Leo got quiet. I could hear him breathing, this old man's breath on the line from Arizona. He said, no, don't say that. You made a choice. You stayed. You built a life. That's not cowardice. It's a different kind of strength. But it didn't feel like strength. It felt like a waste. Then he asked me, did you ever find your storm, Michelle? And I looked at the painting. I said, I'm looking at it right now. But that wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth hit me after we hung up. The phone was back in its cradle. The house was silent. And I realized something. I started crying. Not quiet tears. Huge, shaking sobs that hurt my ribs. I cried for an hour. Here's what I realized. It wasn't just about Leo. It wasn't just about the love I walked away from. It was about me, the woman I buried. Leo saw her. Joseph never did. But the real crime was that I stopped seeing her too. I killed her off to make that quiet marriage work. I made myself smaller, quieter. I folded away every wild, colorful, stormy part of myself so I could fit in that little house with that kind man. And I called that being a good wife. The cost was me. That's what I lost. Myself. For 47 years. I thought the regret was about Leo. It wasn't. It was about Michelle. I abandoned her. I left her in that art gallery in 1967, and I never went back for her. When Joseph brought me those tulips, I didn't just choose him. I chose against myself. That's the hardest moment. Realizing you have been your own betrayer. That the hollow feeling wasn't the marriage. It was the empty space where I was supposed to be. I thought about Susan, my daughter. Did she sense it? That her mother was a ghost? I think she did. She's always been so vibrant, so loud with her own life. Maybe she was loud enough for both of us, but I never showed her how to be that way. I just hung her wild drawing on the fridge. I never told her to chase the feeling. I just let her see me be quiet. That's a cost, too. What if I'd shown her a different way? After the crying stopped, I felt raw, empty, but clean. Like a fever had broken. The cold spot was gone, yes, but something else was there. A kind of sad, clear understanding. I didn't hate my life. I had a daughter I love, a granddaughter, a home. But I saw the shape of the other life, the one I didn't lead. It was messy and uncertain and probably painful, but it would have been true. I sat there in my quiet living room, an old woman, and I finally met the young woman I used to be. I said to her in my head, "I'm sorry. I am so sorry I left you behind." And for the first time in 60 years, I felt like we were in the same room. And for the first time in 60 years, I felt like we were in the same room. That young woman and this old one. We just sat together in the quiet. Here's what she taught me, what I finally understand. I was wrong about loneliness. I thought it was an empty room, so I filled it with a person, Jove. But loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about being unknown. You can be unknown in a crowded bed, in a shared kitchen, for 47 years. I was. The cure for loneliness isn't another warm body. It's a witness. Someone who sees the storm in you and doesn't hand you an umbrella. They look up at the clouds with you and say, "Isn't it magnificent?" Leo was that. For 10 minutes in a gallery, for a few stolen weeks, he was my witness. And I gave it up because I thought being a good person meant choosing the quiet, predictable harbor. But a good life requires honesty, not just kindness. It requires you to show up as your true, messy self. I didn't. I performed a role, the good wife, the stable partner. I performed it so well I forgot who I was underneath the performance. That's the lesson. Don't perform. Just be there, in all your chaotic, glorious color. So my advice, especially if you're my age, is this. Don't marry because you're lonely. Marry because you've found your witness. Marry because there's one person whose attention feels like sunlight on a part of you that's been in shadow for years. It's not about constant passion. It's about a fundamental recognition. You look at them and think, "Oh, there you are. I've been looking for you." And they look back and see you, all of you, even the parts you're ashamed of. That's the foundation. Anything else is just building on sand. It will hold for a while. It might even look sturdy from the outside. But the first real storm, and life always brings a storm, will wash it right away. And you'll be left standing in the wreckage, wondering why you built it there in the first place. I know, but here is the hope, the perspective I found on the dusty attic floor. It is never too late for honesty. It is never too late to stop performing. Maybe your marriage is your harbor. Maybe you've been safe there for decades. That's okay. But you can still be honest within it. You can take out one of those folded up parts of yourself and show it to your partner. You can say, "This is me too. I've been afraid to show you." Maybe they'll surprise you. Maybe they won't. But you will have been true. And if you're alone like I was after Joseph died, your honesty is with yourself. Look at the painting you hid. Unwrap it. Ask yourself the question you've been avoiding. You still have time. Maybe not decades. Maybe not for a grand romance. But you have right now. And right now is enough to stop lying to yourself. That's where it all begins.